So what is your full birth name?
I'll say it in Portuguese and then I'll translate it. João Fontes Sousa. John Fontes Sousa, we say in English.
Were you named after anyone?
Not that I know of, except the last name, of course. That's the family name.
So when and where were you born?
I was born in the Azores Islands, island of São Jorge, in 1950, long time ago.
So can you tell me, when did your family immigrate to the United States?
Well, they didn't all come at the same time. I'm from a large family. There are 10 of us. My father died when I was 9. And then one of the brothers older than me wanted to come to the US at the age of 17. He wanted to avoid military service in Africa. Portugal was in war in Angola, Guinea, and Mozambique. And so he tried to come, and the government said, no, you can only come if you're called by a parent living in the US. My mother was the daughter of an American citizen. My grandfather was a sheep herder in Nevada here at the turn of the 1900s. He got his citizenship papers in Marin County in 1906 and then returned to St. George to raise a family. And so when my mother heard this, she says, well, I can go any day. And so I think in a week she left and came to Modesto and then called my brother, Joe, and then he came. I was in the seminary, that's where I did the high school in the Azores Islands. And so then I left and I came with my younger brother. Today he is Dr. Frank Sousa at the University of Massachusetts. He's the director of the Portuguese department there and the Portuguese Center. He was 9 years old, I was 17. I brought him over. The two of us came and I went to milk cows in Modesto. My brothers had an opening there in the dairy and I was there for a year. I didn't like it. I wasn't good at it. I needed out. So I went to Modesto Junior College to learn English. I enrolled in August 1968. And then I became a teacher, a vice principal, a principal, and lately a superintendent. I retired 10 years ago.
So then to recap, your mother came first.
Yes.
Landed in Modesto, and then three of your brothers,
yes.
Two of your brothers and you came over.
Well, if you want to go in that detail, it's a long story. It would give a movie, a film. You could create one. My older brother, when he turned 17, he came like in 1964, I think, or 63. At the time, they let him come. Then when the next brother was going to come, he couldn't, so mother had to come. He came with my older sister. And then I came in June 1967. Then 3 or 4 of the other brothers then came, and then the whole family was here. And then we all went different directions. The 3 older ones had dairies most of their lives and still do. And I went to study, and all the younger ones studied, and one is a pastor in Turlock, Father Emmanuel Sousa. Then my other brother, George Sousa, he just retired as a counselor, psychologist. And the younger one is still a professor in Massachusetts. The younger one was a teacher in San Jose. She just retired because she has a preschool and it required time and effort, so she retired from instruction and does that full time. My sister worked in a bank, and that's all of them.
Okay, you say that's all of them, so I couldn't keep track. So how many children?
There are 10 of us in the family. I'm number 4.
All right, I remember you saying 10.
Oh, I missed one, Sebastian.
Okay.
He's kind of the real estate tycoon in Turlock.
Okay, all right. I remember you saying 10. I was just kind of
Yeah,
trying
there
to
were
keep
9
up.
right now.
Yes, okay.
Now there's 10.
All right, good. Okay, I am clear on that. So was it the dairy then that drew the family then to Modesto? The
Yeah,
opportunity to work in
it,
that?
it was the job of the two older ones
Right.
because they were working in Stevenson and then accepted the job in Modesto. The owners were actually from our village in the Azores in St. George, and there were 4 milkers. One left, and I arrived at the time, so the position stayed open for me, and I worked there for a year, and then left to Modesto Junior College, Fresno State, and so on.
So it sounds like there was an established Portuguese community then when you moved to Modesto. Would that be fair to say that it was pretty easy to get adjusted?
To a certain point. The immigration to the Central Valley increased after the volcano in the island of Fayal in 1957. And so early 60s, there was a big increase in the immigration because President Kennedy opened it for anyone who was affected by that volcano in the Azores. So in the 1960s, you see a lot of Azorians coming to the United States. When I arrived, I was a little bit lost. I didn't speak the language. We were peasants. We were milking cows. That was something I wasn't good, so I was out of my environment or my comfort zone. I didn't speak the language. I needed to learn it quickly. But every week a new group would arrive. We started playing soccer in Stevenson, and the group would increase. Every month there would be someone new to play soccer with us. And then 2 priests passed by on the way to the Azores coming from Timor, East Timor in Indonesia. And I knew them before they were ordained priests, and they heard I was in Modesto and they were in Turlock, just in passing. And they wanted to talk to me, so we met, and they said, "Do you think there's enough interest in forming a Portuguese youth group?" I said, "Absolutely." And okay, well then. And so we had our first meeting on October 17th, 1969, a Friday. There were about 37 that showed up, and then it increased. Later on, we had 50s and 60s, and the number of youth that kept coming, because it was a very safe environment. It was done in Portuguese. It felt good. For me, it felt good. And so that continued to expand. This was at Sacred Heart Parish in Turlock. But the activities continued, increased so much that the English-speaking parish community kept saying to the pastor, "Hey, these foreigners, they have everything. They have the Portuguese youth group, they have retreats, they have meetings for parents. We have nothing." And so the solution was to kick us out. And so we were kicked out of the parish mid-May 1972. And they thought it would be the end of it, of that activity. But we went over to the Assyrian Catholic Church there on Berkeley Avenue, and we told them we've been kicked out. Can these 2 priests say Mass here? "Oh yeah, we're a small congregation. We'd love more people here." "Yeah, sure." So then they started saying Mass there, and the community congregated there. We went looking around for a property, and we found this one. Today is Our Lady of the Assumption in Turlock on Walnut Avenue. And so we bought the 5 acres that came up for sale. There was a pigsty there. We transformed that to the adults' meeting room. There was a goat barn type thing. We transformed it for the youth group to meet. We brought in a trailer. The priests went to the diocese and asked for permission to say Mass there. And our first Mass, I think on a Sunday, we had 112, somewhere around there, 112 people there. The trailer was already full. And then that priest saw that actually we hadn't disappeared, and went to the bishop with some priest friends to see if they could stop us. So the bishop sent us a letter saying that couldn't have any more. Before they did that, we started building a small church. So if you go to the parish of Our Lady of the Assumption in Turlock, there are two churches. There's the small one that seats 144, and then there is the bigger one that seats, I think, about 700 or so. We did 144 because we were a small community. We couldn't afford, we were all new in this country, and we committed that we would pay 1 month expenses. Each family took a month. And so we started building the church. The bishops allowed us to start. So we started, and the foundations were barely visible. This group of priests went to the bishop of the Diocese of Stockton saying, hey, stop these guys. And so the bishop sent us a letter saying, stop everything. I never gave you formal permission. So we wrote a letter to him saying that what we're doing fits the teachings of the church. We quoted extensively from a document that had just come out, written by Pope Paul VI, called Pastoralis Migratorum Cura. That's Latin. In English, it would be On the Care of the Migrant Peoples. And in there it says that the migrants have a right to have a place of their own where they can celebrate Mass in their language, their traditions, hold meetings, and all that kind of stuff. So we told Bishop, if you stop us, you're going against the teachings of the church. So then he took this to the National Conference of Catholic Bishops and got their opinion. And I understand he was told he couldn't stop us. So he came back and told us to go ahead and finish. So the church was inaugurated on June 11th, 1973. And
what a story.
Oh, yeah. It's a very interesting story, and we all feel bad that it hasn't been written. We carried this story, and once we start dying, because we're all in our 70s, this story might disappear, and to me it's one of the most beautiful stories of immigration. Then from that small group, some left the cows and went like Dinis Borges. You know, he was working on the Portuguese radio programs. In Portuguese, it's an insecure job, not well paying at all. He was a young guy, I remember him. We talked many times. He went to study, and now you know what he became. In my case, I went to study, became a superintendent. Another one of the 12 founders went to study, became a superintendent in Salida. He retired several years ago. 2 others became professors at Fresno State, and so on. From a small group, concentrated but very determined, a lot of stuff has happened. The story of that parish is something that should be written before everybody disappears from the scene.
Absolutely, I agree with you on
Yeah.
that. Well, let's go back a little bit, because you came to this country when you were 17 years old.
Correct.
Did you miss your island? It must have been difficult.
It was very difficult, especially because I didn't speak the language here. I didn't have a footing. You're floating and you're trying to adjust and see if there is a place where you can land. And so I thought, because I don't have a father that provides that safety net for me to try this or try that, I felt I was in a situation of sink or swim. So I went to college and I registered, and it started, and I didn't speak English, and I thought, if I don't make it here, I have to go back to the Azores, because I had high school, and in those days, the level that I had could lend you a good job. And so I remember thinking, I'm going to give it my all. And in November, I remember on Thanksgiving break, and after we came back, the students in the Foreign Students Club were telling me, hey, you're speaking English. I see, you don't even notice. You're just picking up from everywhere you can. And all of a sudden, I was fluent, and people say, hey, where did that come from? See, I'd go home and listen to Walter Cronkite give the CBS Evening News. That's the way it is. And I would tell myself, man, if he spoke a little slower, because while I'm figuring out a word, he keeps going. And actually, he didn't speak that fast. But that's the kind of life I was doing, that I was going through, the stage of my life at that time. In the meantime, we kept growing in the group and in the church. We founded a soccer team, and things were increasing. Then this beautiful girl came from Brazil. She had come from the Azores to Brazil. Her parents had a problem where the water just washed everything away they had, and then they came to the U.S., and here comes this girl speaking Portuguese with a Brazilian accent. I was the president of the youth group, and I started talking to her. We married. That's my wife.
Is this Modesto Junior College that I'm trying to...
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. When we actually got married, I was already at Fresno. I was at Stanislaus State finishing up my BA, and then I came to Fresno State for my master's. I finished my master's here in 1973, August 1973. Walked the line in June, or May or June 1974. And she was my girlfriend at the time. We couldn't marry because I couldn't afford to get married.
Right.
So she was staying with her parents, and I was at my mom's and coming to Fresno State. And then once we got jobs, we got married in Turlock on July 5th, 1975. That's 46 and a half years ago.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So it sounds like your family assimilated well as you were kind of talking about the accomplishments that your siblings also had. But was it important to your mom and to even the children to maintain a strong sense of Portuguese identity? It sounds like it was.
That's who we were. A plant can only grow on what it is. A fig tree cannot grow as an orange tree. And so we were Portuguese, and by the time you're 17, you're going to be Portuguese for the rest of your life, if that's who you are at 17. And over the years, I told my wife, when I retire, I want to go and spend 3 months at our house in the Azores. And she said, doing what? I said, nothing. I told her, people don't imagine the toll that it took on me, using myself as an example, that it took on me to compete against native speakers and beat them for those jobs that I held, to be a teacher. Many people interviewed for that position. When I became vice principal, many native speakers, they were probably all native speakers, interviewed for that job, for vice principal, for superintendent. And so I always had that knowledge, that awareness, that to get that job, I have to be a little better than everybody else, because they'll detect the accent a little bit. They will know that I didn't go to high school in this country or elementary. And so that's a void in your career. But I could also make up for, but I did it in another country, and I was very successful in college. I always had A's and graduated from Fresno State with summa cum laude and all of that stuff. So you have to give it extra. Also, I had to be very aware of the surroundings. What do they want to know? And compensate, almost overcompensate, so that I could do well in the interviews. And I succeeded, as you can tell.
So you went to Stanislaus, you got your master's degree at Fresno State. Did you know that you wanted to be an educator?
Yes.
What was it about education?
Yeah, it's in my family. My mom, ever since we were kids, she would always say, we're poor, but through education you can become somebody. So that was instilled in us very quickly. I enrolled in kindergarten a year before I was supposed to, but the teacher was our next door neighbor. She allowed, because I already could read, and not read fluently, but I knew a lot of stuff. I knew the history of Portugal. And so I was very inquisitive. And so education was the only way for me. I thought of going to be a banker. I thought of trying this, trying that, and I would always fall back. I went to the University of Santa Barbara as a student in 1966 and 1967. 1976 and 1977. I was already married. And took courses in Portuguese in 2 summers. I went back as an instructor at the University of Santa Barbara for the intensive Portuguese summer sessions of 1981, 1982. And I was offered a scholarship with everything paid for to get my PhD there. And so my wife and I, we analyzed it. Those were difficult years for education. I'd have to go cross country hunting for a job at the university in those days. And so we decided, no, let's stay here and raise our family with the family. Because in a sense, it would have been another traumatic move for me. Having lost my father at the age of 9, never having grieved that, because in those days, you just don't talk about those things. So the grieving of the loss of my father took me my life long. I only really, really grieved in my late 40s and 50s. When my siblings would get together and we started talking about things in the past, we each realized that the other one also hadn't finished grieving. And then we started talking openly about these things. And finally, because my father left home with lung cancer and went to the island of Terceira, we never saw him again. He died and was buried there because they're buried the next day, the same day or the next. So no closure. We just got a telegram that he had passed away. We didn't go to the funeral. We never saw him again. And so, I remember in those days saying, I think I carry too big of a load to go fight this other one of going across country looking for a job, raising kids away from the family. And I never regretted that decision. It was the best decision that I ever made. And that was an important decision.
To stay with your family.
And raise the family here. And then we were a very religious family. My dad, before he died, we prayed the rosary every evening. He led it. My dad died. My mother started leading the rosary. So we never missed Mass. We took so many courses in religion so we would learn and study our faith. And so today, looking back, I see the hand of God in many of the things that happened to me and to my family. My faith has increased, and it's not because of what I studied, but because of what I lived. I don't need proof of the existence of God. I have lived. I'm a living proof of the existence of God. That's the way I see it myself. And so when I'm a deacon and when I'm preaching, I don't need to convince people from what I've read. Yeah, that helps to enhance the message, but it didn't create the message.
So was it a natural, Deacon John, was it a natural progression for you then, after you were a teacher, then a vice principal, a principal, a superintendent? Was it inevitable, you think, that you would go on and become a deacon, or at what point did you become a deacon? Well,
my wife and I moved to Hanford in 1982. So it's going to be 40 years this August that we moved to Hanford to become a teacher. And I started getting involved in the church and the Portuguese community. I taught catechism in Portuguese. I taught Bible studies in Portuguese. And then Father Dan Avila from this diocese, he was in Hanford at St. Bridget's for many years. One day, he and I were going together to a meeting of Teams of Our Lady in Hilmar, and as we were driving by the Sanger area, I remember that day vividly. He was driving, I was in the passenger seat. He says, "Hey, John, have you ever thought of being a deacon?" I said, "Father, I have thought about that. And I would be honored, available, and I would love to do it, but I don't feel the calling." And it's something that I feel that if you are not called, you shouldn't get in there. He goes, really, that's how you feel? I said, yeah, oh, I'd be honored to be a deacon. Well, the next day, our deacon there was coming out. I said, hey, deacon, what does it take to be a deacon? He says, oh, the orientation class is next week, and it's in our parish. They're coming from all over. It's here. I'll sign you up for that orientation. I said, yeah, I want to learn more. Well, the rest is history. I was ordained January 15, 2011. And 9 months later, I was the director of the permanent diaconate and have been doing this for 10 years.
So can you explain to those of us who are not Roman Catholic what the role of a deacon is in the church?
Yeah, well, the best word to describe a deacon is a servant. We're servants. Comes from diakonia in Greek. And so we're servants. The church created it as a permanent order because deacons in the past, before Vatican II, they were transitional deacons on the way to priesthood. Vatican II in early 1960s created the position of deacon in which we're ordained. But we're not ordained to offer the Eucharist, the Mass. We're ordained for service. We're ordained for the diocese and for the bishop. We are his arms and feet throughout the diocese. Whatever the needs are, he sends us there. Like he sent me here when I was still a baby deacon to be the director. And so it's service. The three ministries of the deacon are the ministry of the word. So we're supposed to announce the word of God everywhere and every time we can. So we preach, we teach. Then we have ministry of liturgy. So we serve at the altar. We can do expositions of the Blessed Sacrament. We can do baptisms, funerals, weddings, all of those things I do. Have done many of them. And then the third category is ministry of charity and justice. So we have many deacons here that go to prison to minister to incarcerated people. And we have the largest incarcerated population of any diocese in the world, is the Diocese of Fresno. It's the Diocese of Fresno because we're 8 counties. We go to San Bernardino, to Nevada, and to LA. You know, our borders go far away. It's a humongous diocese. And so I'm hoping that all the chaplain positions that open up in the future in prisons will be filled by deacons, because it is very appropriate for us to minister to incarcerated people. I've done it, and it is very rewarding, and they really appreciate us going there.
So how many deacons are associated with the diocese?
82 right now.
And as the director then, are you responsible for all of them, or what specifically do you do?
Yes, I am, and I'm also responsible to form the future deacons. So anyone who wants to be a deacon, a Catholic deacon in these 8 counties that compose our diocese basically goes through me. They go to their pastor first usually, or the pastor will call me and say, I recommend so-and-so. They give me their phone number and I start. Right now we have 34 couples journeying to the diaconate in the Diocese of Fresno. We have 17 guys to be ordained October 1st of this year, God willing. And we have 17 journeying that they just entered. So it's still a long road ahead, and usually not 100% of them make it. But right now, today as we speak, there are 34 couples, because they journey as a couple even though only the guy gets ordained. Right. They have to grow together as a couple in prayer, in holiness, or things fall apart. And so I think overall we have been very successful as far as that goes.
So we've been talking about the Roman Catholic Church, and as Candace can attest to, you know, in many of our interviews, the folks that we've spoken with have said that they can't imagine being Portuguese without being Catholic, and vice versa. Can you speak a little bit about the role that the Catholic Church plays in the Portuguese and Azorean communities?
Yeah, most of the Portuguese that you have spoken to probably have their roots, either came or have their roots in the Azores Islands. There are 9 of them. And the Azores were discovered in the mid-1400s. And then the populations that came to fill the land were Catholic. And then over the centuries, through the isolation, it became kind of a solid group of Catholic peoples in the various islands. And so everything that evolved, the customs, the traditions, were connected to the church. If you look at the Holy Ghost celebrations, the festas, they come from the celebration of Pentecost Sunday, where the Queen of Portugal, Queen Isabel, they say Isabella, they say Elizabeth. In Portuguese, we say Isabel. She, as the Queen on Pentecost Sunday, would welcome the poor and crown one of the most poor of the poor. And there she would feed them and have them try her crown. And so you see that in the festas. They have a big procession. They have the queen and the court and all of that. And then when they get to the church, at the end of Mass, the queen is crowned. That's where the tradition comes from. And then most of the traditions of the Azorians have connections to the church. You know, I have been asked as a deacon to go to bullfights and bless the crowd and the bulls before the bullfights. What connection does that have to the church? Well, it's a dangerous task to get in with a bull that is not playing with you. The bull is serious. When he chases you, it's for reals. So it's a very dangerous activity. And so they want a blessing before they venture in the ring with a bull and so forth. So I think that most, if not all, the traditions of the Azorians over the centuries were cemented around the church. And so when these people go to foreign countries and they want to revive whatever they know, what do they know? Traditions that are connected to the church. And they've been able, very successful, to implement them in California, in Massachusetts, in other countries. It's very distinctive, but they revive those traditions everywhere.
So let me ask you a question, if I may. Do you think that as time has gone on and people have immigrated to the United States, especially when you talk about second, third generation Americans, do you think those traditions, Deacon John, are still tied to religious meaning? Or do you think it's maybe lost some of that over time?
Now, the tradition goes on. Sometimes the meat, the religiosity that created that tradition may not be there, because I see people coming in the parade, which in the Azores we call procession. They come in the parade to the festa, and they come to church, and then they stay outside, outside the door, and they don't go in. So you can tell that sometimes in the second generation and third generation, they're not practicing their faith, but they still want to maintain the cultural aspect of their traditions.
And as a deacon, how do you feel about that?
You know, I'm a deacon to help Jesus save souls. I'm not a deacon to criticize and to judge others. Yeah, there are some things that I probably would tweak, that I probably would change, but that's not my mission. And so when they ask me to go bless the cattle, like they do sometimes on the day before the festa, I go and I enjoy a meal with them, and I'm there with, that's my people. I'm one of them. I love it. I love to be with them. When my brother, Father Manuel, Sousa, and Turlock, they have the big fest in August, he always invites me to be at the altar with him and to even bless the cattle or be in the procession and everything. Those are my people. And the older I get, the more I love them. You know, I feel comfortable. That's who I am. And now that I have retired and that I have the freedom not to compete with anybody for anything, I enjoy these things always more. My wife and I were going to the Azores this summer, God willing. We're taking our grandkids for the first time. And so, yeah. Now, it doesn't bother me as a person. As a deacon, I wish that sometimes they had kept a more vibrant faith, not just the external appearances of the faith that created what they're celebrating.
So you mentioned your family. I'd like to talk about them now.
Sure.
You mentioned your wife. I know you're a father and a grandfather. How important was it to you and your wife to raise your children with a strong sense of Portuguese identity or Azorean identity?
Yeah, again, that's who we are. We raised them the way we were and the way we felt that that's us. When my older son went to school, he didn't speak English. He was 5 years old, went to kindergarten at Roosevelt School. I was the vice principal. And so the policy in the state of California is if someone comes in and in the registration shows a second language, you have to test the child in both languages, English and the second language, so that we see how we address the child's needs. So my son tested proficient in Portuguese and proficient in English. Wow, I'm thinking, well, watching cartoons, playing with the neighbors, all these other things by osmosis. He had gathered enough of the English language to be deemed fluent when he started kindergarten. The reason we always spoke, and to this day, we still speak Portuguese to our kids, and then sometimes we go back and forth in English. But if it's just our kids and not the grandkids, we sometimes speak to them in Portuguese. But my wife and I were convinced that if they didn't gain fluency in Portuguese before school, they would never gain it. They'd learn words and they wouldn't understand here and there, but it wouldn't sink in.
So tell me about the importance of language. Tell me why Portuguese, why maintain that language? Go ahead.
Words, speaking, is an expression of your identity. When we listen to a speaker, we start passing judgment. Oh, this person is this way or that way, because you can't hide your identity, the person that you are inside, once you speak. And so for us, this connection has been and will always be very important. I can function as well in English today as I can in Portuguese. Actually, I found out last night or this morning that this interview was going to be conducted in English. Because I thought, if it's Denise, she's probably going to conduct this in Portuguese. And I just found out a few hours ago, and here we are in English. And I'm not struggling with expressing my thoughts. If they were in Portuguese, if this was in Portuguese, I would be feeling just as comfortable. I feel that you gain by knowing more than by knowing less. One time a principal made fun of my accent. He was joking, we were friends, and occasionally you will detect an accent in me. And he detected an accent and he repeated the word making fun of me. I said, hey, be quiet. Because for every word you can say, I can say 3. I have a master's in Spanish. I'm fluent in Portuguese, it's my native language, and English. So I can function in all 3 cultures and languages. He can function in 1. Yeah, he does it very well, but that's 1. And times 3 is always better in these things. So I feel it's a value if you can learn and function in a second language. It doesn't mean you're going to function there. I have a master's in Spanish since 1974. How have I used it? Not much. And now I preach in Spanish every so often. So I haven't used the Spanish extensively. But it's a knowledge I have. And when I went to Spain and when I went to Mexico, I didn't speak in English or in another language. I spoke in their language. And after Mass, they come up and talk to me, and I speak to them like one of their own. So it's very valuable to know a second language.
So did all 3 of your children then, you say that you speak with them or in Portuguese. So what other customs have they maintained?
It's an English tradition, but it's also a Portuguese tradition. Christmas, for example. They value us gathering together. Because of COVID, and we were hosting the family Christmas this year, so I told my wife, well, we can have half of the family in the sunroom, because it can accommodate 18 people, and so we could probably have 6 people there, and then the rest will be in the garage. So my younger son lives in LA, and I called him and I said, hey, Albert, I'm thinking, he goes, no, we're all going to be in the garage together at one time. What's Christmas about? Family, we're going to be together. And so I communicated to everybody, we'll be there. So, if you need to wear a mask, make your own decisions. And we accommodated, made sure, and nobody came down with COVID. But what I could see was the importance of this family gathering. My family, the side of my family, we still gather for Christmas, and usually it's about 70 people on Christmas Day. And my wife's side of the family is on Christmas Eve, which this was, the one I'm talking about. Yeah. So, that's one aspect of that. And then, getting togethers, doing barbecue and family. For us, family is very important. When you grow in an island, you don't benefit from the safety nets that we have today. Insurance, welfare, all these kinds. It's family. When you're hurting, when you can't make it, when you can't do it, when you don't know what to do, you go to family. So it's very important to have not just the nucleus family, but the extended family. And that's very prevalent in the Portuguese community. You'll see them getting together in the Portuguese halls, playing cards, celebrating the killing of the pig and a big meal. And all of these things, family is tremendously important, and it is the same in my house.
It certainly sounds like something that you've passed on to your
Yes.
children. I mean, you're taking your grandchildren to the
Azores.
Azores
Mm-hmm.
With your daughter-in-law,
Yes,
who's Jewish.
who's Jewish, and
So-
can't wait to go to the Azores.
Yeah, so just a few more questions, but so tell me about the Azores. What is it about the Azores that calls you back on a regular basis?
That's a very interesting question. And my wife sometimes asks me that, what's there calling you? And there is a pulling that reaches the depths of your soul. If you have been born in an island, because when you're born and raised in an island, you have limitations everywhere. And the big limitation is the ocean. And as a kid, if you get sick, you're going to die in your village. There'll be minimum services that will be rendered to you if you have a cold or something, but something very serious, there were very few services. And so the island molds you. And I've seen in California that this affects the men more than the women. I don't know if it's because we're more outgoing and therefore experience more the limitations outside. But I've seen many men that want to return back to the Azores once they retire. And some do and have. There are many Portuguese retired people there that made their living in California. I, for one, I'm 72. I wouldn't mind living the rest of my years in my little village. Or at least a year or 2 or 3. I'd love to be there. It took such a toll on me to live and be part of the rat race and to make it that I'm not exhausted, but I love to go back to my roots and enjoy it, carefree. My island has less than 10,000 people as a population. No freeways, no cities. And you go any place at night or at day, it's a carefree place to live. And so I almost wanted to finish living my youth by going back there. I guess I'm becoming a little philosophical about this, but I'm trying to answer your question.
So what do you hope that your grandchildren and your daughter-in-law take from the experience?
That they grow as human beings, that they open their eyes, that there is more than Glendale where they live. The world is not just Glendale. The world is not just Hanford, because they come to Hanford too, and they know our family, and so forth. But for them to experience. And also, I want to tell my grandkids when I take them by the hand in my village, that's the picture there, I'm going to go to the woods there, and I'm going to tell them, you're part of this too. You came from here. This is the part that my grandfather opened up to cultivate the land. And this is ours. This is yours too. You're part of this land. I did that with my younger son in 2014, and I think that kind of touched him, realizing, yeah, I was born in Hanford, but I'm more than that. I actually have roots right here, 6,000 miles away or 5,000 miles away. And it enriches you when you become cognizant of not just who you are, but where you came from. Because if you know that, then you understand yourself better. It's like my grandson 2 years ago for Thanksgiving, he sent me a card, a Thanksgiving card. And he was wishing me a happy Thanksgiving. And he says he's half Jewish and half Catholic. And I found that beautiful. I saved that piece. He, at that time, 2 years ago, he's 9 now, saw himself as half Jewish and half Catholic. He still didn't understand that he's half Portuguese. But these experiences and walking the places and see where I learned to swim and the first places where I played soccer and when I did this or that. And not just me, but his ancestors on his father's side, I think will be very enriching for them.
So one final question. You're 72 years old. As you look back on your life, what are you most proud of?
Well, that's a loaded question, and it would take a long time to answer. I'll try to be concise. But the life I lead today as a Catholic deacon and as a retired person also, I look back and my heart is full of gratitude, for what God has given me and for how God guided me. There were times when I could have gone the wrong way. And you have two roads to follow, they don't give to the same place. They're going to put you in a different place. And the road that I followed placed me in a very nice place. I am very happy with my life. I'm very happy for who I am. And I just love things as they are at this time.
Was there anything that I did not ask that you want to touch on?
No, for now, I think that's probably sufficient. I don't know if the listeners can keep up this long with so many twists and turns.
I thought you told some fantastic stories. Seriously, this was wonderful.
Well, because there is a part that touches Dinesh Borges. Maybe he would be upset if I didn't touch upon it. I can say that I have a hand about Father Raul Marta coming to Tulare that gave rise to the Portuguese Center that Dinesh was a part for ages, for a long time, and created a lot of what has happened, many of the things that have happened in there. And that happened in 1985 when Monsignor Minhoto, who was in Tulare, talked to me, and he wanted to bring a Portuguese priest over here. We talked, that happened. I went to San Francisco to pick him up, Father Raul Marta, on March 7th, 1985. We had a solemn entrance into St. Aloysius on March 8th, 1985, with Father Raul Marta. And then from there came the creation of that center that they've had all of these years, and many, many other things that Dinesh then could finish the rest of the story.
We'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Again.
My pleasure.